5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. I appreciate 4790 being considered by the committee today and markup. I also appreciate the opportunity over the last few weeks to work extensively with my friend Dr. Foster on the other side of the aisle and trying to make this a better bill that accomplishes our mutual objectives. For almost 8 years of reflecting on the Dodd-Frank Act, this committee and the Senate committee have had hearings and discussion on many aspects of Dodd-Frank, pro and con, and what affects the economy, what's affected the industry, what's affected access of credit to our families and to our businesses. Probably no section's been talked about more than Section 619, the so-called Volcker Act. Community bankers and Wall Street bankers have talked about the impact of the Volcker Act, its complexity, the negative impact on routine market-making activities in our capital markets. That's something so critical for our country, to have adequate market making at good prices for both debt and equity securities in our capital markets. By not having that liquidity, not having access to more players in the market, we do raise costs for investors who are buying and selling stocks and bonds. We raise the cost of mortgages and credit cards, which are frequently securitized. So we hurt our families by this regulation. Regulators have come before us and talked extensively. Dan Trillo, Mr. Obama's vice chairman of the Fed, called the rule too complicated. Chair Yellen of the Federal Reserve said the implementation has been complex, and she was very open to change. Tom Curry, the comptroller of the currency for Mr. Obama, testified and said that this rule desperately needs simplicity and clarity. Mr. Volcker himself said that proprietary trading, the target of this rule back in 2010, was not central to the 2008 crisis. And Secretary Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury under the Bush administration, on reflecting on the Volcker Act, said that it had in fact reduced liquidity, and the rule, quote, solved a problem that's not a problem, close quote. And then finally, we've met with bankers, regional bankers for the Federal Reserve and the New York Federal Reserve, saying they cannot implement this rule. So that's the kind of feedback that we've gotten. And there's also been two studies, the Fed study in 2016 on liquidity, which outlined the problems with Volcker and the impact on the debt markets, and finally the June 2017 study from the U.S. Treasury supporting the Choice Act and our off-ramp for Volcker, and also supporting the idea that community banks under $10 billion shouldn't be subject to it. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to talk about the aspect of what this bill does. It does two things. Like the Senate bill, S-2155, and like the Treasury report called for, it exempts banks under $10 billion that don't have meaningful trading activity from the rule. And secondly, it tackles the issue of harmonization that all of our Fed bank presidents and other regulators referenced as a problem. One firm, broker-dealer firm, scheduled a meeting with all 5 Volcker regulators in the same room to describe their compliance program and solicit feedback from the group of 5 regulators. The regulators stated that if a joint meeting were to happen, some of the agencies would be unable to provide any feedback because there's no information sharing agreement among regulators, therefore no protection for bank-to-examiner conversations. Further, some firms have been told by their examiners to go ahead and just submit a question to the interagency working group because it will definitely go unanswered. So that's not helpful. So the second part of this bill speaks to this issue of harmonization, and that's where I've had a lot of help from my friend Mr. Foster. We want banks having certainty about this rule so they can go about their business and at the lowest possible cost to our markets for liquidity and capital market efficiency, and for their own compliance programs. So the bill proposes that the Federal Reserve Board of Governors be the principal overseer of this rule, interpreter of this rule, in consultation with our other primary regulators, both the SEC, the CFTC, and the bank regulators. And so that's what this bill does. It's got bipartisan support. It's complementary of the good work done by Senator Crapro in the Senate, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman yields back.